JoJo Rabbit is the latest film from Taika Waititi. I fell in love with his direction style with What We Do in the Shadows, which came out like 6 years ago now. I remember it being a pretty low-key comedy film that just kind of flew under the radar, but me and my friends saw it, and that shit is hilarious, man. It's been a little while since I've watched that film, I must say, but I remember at the time the humor was pretty much sharp, witty, and it very much reminded me of TV shows like Flight of the Conchords, which just has this really subtle, irreverent type humor, which I just find really, really hilarious. Jermaine Clements was involved in that film too, and he was also involved in Flight of the Conchords, so I think that humour crossed over and just made for a really, really enjoyable comedy film in the 2010s, because I must admit, comedy these days isn't really hitting like it did quite some time ago, and I'm not trying to be like, oh, films aren't as good as they used to be, but I definitely think there's been a drop-off in quality for comedy films. Like, some of the biggest comedy films of this decade have come from like Todd Phillips, and I find those films to be pretty terrible. A lot of the Adam Sandler films that we've got this decade are pretty terrible too. Bridesmaids isn't really that funny. Come on, guys, calm down with that film. And so I've just been kind of hungry for some good comedy, and honestly, I think Taika Waititi brought it quite nicely and quite daringly, I must say, with Jojo Rabbit. Which I must say is somewhat surprising to me, because the trailers did not leave much of a good impression on me at all. Going into this, I just thought it looked really stupid for the sake of being stupid without much of an actual purpose. And honestly, I would say that's actually not too far away from the actual truth. I think if you were to ask the question of what was Taika Waititi's vision for what he wanted viewers to take away from this film, I think you would struggle to find an answer, or if you were to try and find an answer, you'd probably reach quite far to, conjure up some kind of answer as to what Taika was attempting to do here. The thing is with Jojo Rabbit is that it attempts to toe the line between this heartfelt type film, which has this emotional message to send out, and also being this ridiculously bizarre satire film, similar to something like Airplane or something. And what makes Airplane work a lot better than something like Jojo Rabbit is that it just knows exactly what it is, whereas I think Jojo Rabbit struggles at times to really quite show you what it's wanting to tell you, I think. And I find that to be quite a huge shame, because I just enjoyed so much of the humour in this film. Like, some of the jokes didn't really land. Some of the jokes were really quite obvious and on the nose too. Especially, like the mocking of Nazis and stuff. Like, it seemed really quite easy to make those jokes. But then some of the jokes were like really, really on point and hilarious. But then you have this sort of imbalance between this child trying to, learn from his experience and become a better person. And I just don't think that quite worked to the way it wanted to. I do think ultimately what it tried to tell you was that, children are gullible and, may be fed things that aren't necessarily true, but ultimately what you have to do is learn for yourself and experience those things and, realize that your heroes in this bizarre universe here, his hero was Adolf Hitler. Your heroes aren't exactly what they're pinned up to be. But it didn't always entirely work when you have his mother in this film, who's Scarlett Johansson, by the way, and I think she was actually really quite good in this role. I generally like her in a lot of the films I've seen. I think she's a very, very strong actress. I think she played the mother role really well, but at the same time, it was kind of confusing that he grew up with this mindset when his mother was complete opposite, and ultimately that ends up being the death of her, because she goes against the Nazi ways, which then sentences her to death, basically. And you just kind of have to wonder how exactly this child has grown up to become this Nazi fanatic being raised by that person. I know it can happen, obviously, and maybe that was sort of the point of the film as well, without his father being around, and maybe he was just troubled and didn't quite have a clear path in life, perhaps. But at the same time, it was a bit of a stretch for him to be the opposite end of the scale when you look at his mother that was there prominent in his life. I think perhaps I'm going way overboard with my criticisms here. I don't know, maybe I'm taking it too seriously, but I think that was the film's fault for making me think this way, because they really should have just gone full satire, and it should have just been a full-on satire movie. I think that would have just worked way better. Like, it could have just been What We Do in the Shadows in this different universe of this child imagining, Adolf Hitler as his friend. Like, why couldn't they have just gone all the way with it? And when they were going all the way with some of the humor, like his friend Yorgi, who was just this ridiculous child who was in this battle zone, being forced to fight for Germany, like, those things were stupid, but they were really funny. And it was way over the top, but then other times it was kind of understated and tried, giving you this nice message so you can take home and think about. And Taika Waititi did not do that part as well as the satire. But I suppose without that, it wouldn't have got the Oscar nomination or the recognition from any of the categories in any areas of any award show, because that's how award shows seem to work. Comedies don't really get that same recognition. But for me, I just feel like I was watching this film and I could see where it could have gone, but it just never really went where I wanted to. And that's probably on me as well, but still, I think it's overall pretty solid. There was some great humor, especially at the beginning of the film. I can't really say no to it. I'd sit through it again, actually, just for that. I think, the characters were really quite well written. Sam Rockwell delivered a great performance. Stephen Merchant's little cameo appearance as well, I thought was great. I mean, he's just always great anyway, but, I love just seeing him in anything. But Stephen Merchant was really fantastic in this. The joke as well, where the Rebel Wilson hands the grenade to the child and tells him to give the man a hug. That shit was so dark, but I laughed so hard at that. That's exactly what I wanted more of. Like that little bit, it was barely even significant to the film, but that one little joke I thought was really where the film could have gone if they just went all the way with it. But oh well, it's good for what it is. It's pretty solid. 6 out of 10 from me. I think Taika Waititi is proving that, he is a pretty strong force in the comedy world at the moment. I haven't seen everything he's put out, but I think, I definitely want to see more of this type of stuff, even if it meant that he wouldn't get that same recognition for it from, award shows. But I think he needs to take his humor in a direction that kind of goes in an extreme way, and I think he could really bring out an amazing comedy. I also forgot to mention Wes Anderson as well. I feel like this film was very much inspired by a film like Moonrise Kingdom, especially the relationship between obviously JoJo, the character, and the Jewish girl. I thought that was very much reminiscent of Moonrise Kingdom, and also just that kind of off-kilter sense of humor that Wes Anderson brings to his films was sort of lingering in this film too, which I thought was a nice little touch, even if it was quite an obvious influence for Taika in this. But yeah, I'm pretty happy that a film like this exists. It's kind of outlandish and ridiculous, and yeah, it's sort of worked, which I'm quite impressed with, and I'm interested to see what people think, because I think it could be kind of divisive, but I think audiences will just love the humour from this film, so we'll see. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Have a good day, and goodbye.